In the middle of the forest, there grew a little pine tree covered with needles instead of green leaves. She was not pleased.
I want to be prettier than all the other trees.
The pine tree had a new thought. She closed her eyes and wished for her dreams to come true.
I wish with all my heart to have golden leaves. I wish with all my heart that I had golden leaves.
5 little wood nymphs were listening to the pine tree. 5 little wood nymphs were listening to the pine tree, hidden behind the 4 old oak trees. That night, as the little pine tree fell asleep, the very giddy and giggling wood nymphs came out from the old oak trees towards the little pine tree.
Let's use our magic to make the pine tree's wish come true. Let's turn the needles into the same magic word. Leaves beyond!
Just then, the little pine tree's needles turned into leaves of shiny, rich gold. The pine tree awoke in the morning and was so very happy.
I'm the most beautiful tree in the whole forest. I'm the most beautiful tree in the forest.
The little pine tree knew that there was not another tree whose leaves were as beautiful as hers. She beamed with joy. Nothing could ruin her day, until a thief came walking past with his henchmen. The gold caught their eyes.
Gold leaves are going to make me so rich.
The thief began to take away all of the little pine tree's leaves.
Be stinking rich, boss. Look at these leaves.
The thief made sure not to leave any leaves on the tree. Carefully picked every one of them.
They're really heavy, so it takes a while.
Now, having gathered all of the leaves, the thief and his henchmen began to leave.
I love the forest.
The thief and his henchmen left the forest, and the little pine tree was sad and shivered in the cold air. She closed her eyes and wished for another dream to come true.
I wish with all my heart that I had leaves of glass. I wish with all my heart that I had leaves of glass.
Behind the old oak trees were the 5 little nymphs listening to the pine tree again. That night, the little pine tree fell asleep, and the 5 nymphs once more came from behind the old oak trees.
She's fast asleep. Her wish is our command to make her leaves of glass. You have to say the magic word. Leaves beyond.
Just then, the little pine tree's leaves turned to a beautiful, glossy glass. The pine tree awoke the next morning and was once again very happy.
I am the most beautiful tree in the forest again.
Suddenly, a really sharp wind arose in the forest, howling and growling with all its might. The old oak trees began to get scared for the little pine tree.
The wind is fierce. Even our own leaves are glowing. That little pine tree is going to freeze. It looks like her leaves might fly off.
The wind began to ferociously blow, and all of a sudden, the little pine tree's leaves of glass flew off and shattered to the ground.
My leaves!
The little pine tree became very sad once again and shivered in the cold air. She closed her eyes and wished for another dream to come true.
I wish with all my heart that I leaves of green. I wish with all my heart that I had leaves of green, just like all the other trees.
And just like the 2 previous nights, the 5 little nymphs were listening to the pine tree from behind the old oak tree. As the pine tree fell asleep, the little nymphs came out from behind the old oak trees.
She wants regular green leaves. Let's use our magic again. Let's say the magic word. Leaves beyond.
Just then, the little pine tree's leaves turned to leaves of green like all of the other trees around her. The pine tree awoke the next morning and was so happy, just like before.
I'm the most beautiful tree in the forest, just like the others. I'm the most beautiful tree in the forest, just like all the others.
The pine tree was so happy to look like the other trees in the forest. That was until 2 hungry goats came into the forest.
I'm so hungry. I don't like farm around because they never gave us enough food. Look at the little tree full of leaves. Let's eat it all.
The two hungry goats quickly became full. They ate all of the pine tree's leaves. The two goats then left, satisfied with the green leaves in their tummies. Suddenly, the old oak trees, full of wisdom, began to laugh.
Ho, ho, ho. That pine tree's so silly. She should just be herself. I liked her as a pine tree. Someday she'll grow to be as tall as us.
As the pine tree shivered from the cold air, she wished for the last time for her biggest dream to come true.
I wish with all my heart I had my own needles. I wish with all my heart that I had my own needles back.
On this last fourth night, the pine tree fell asleep. The 5 little nymphs came out and granted the pine tree's wish. All together, the nymphs said,
She is beautiful.
Just then, the pine tree's leaves were restored to her needles from before. She awoke the next morning and was happier than ever.
I'm the most beautiful tree in the forest, and so is every other tree.
I'm the most beautiful tree in the forest. It's like every other tree.
Did you watch any of the practices or anything?
So,
Is
if
it?
you were to go to a theater building that had a stage, a lot of stuff would now be happening backstage that you would be unaware of. However, that stage is completely exposed. So pardon us as we tell all our secrets and change our set for our next play, okay? So, Pine Tree, please go with some of the helpers and put your masks and your props away.